Okay, and now we're at our 8x5s, 5x8s, 8x5s. It's the end of the day. But it's 5 incredibly innovative people and projects and programs. And each person's going to get 8 minutes, and we're going to begin with Masha from Met Kids, telling you the new way to look at museums and engagement.
Hi, thank you. So hello, everyone. I'm Masha Turchinsky. I create original content and online features in digital at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And today I'm going to talk to you about Met Kids, which is the Metropolitan's new feature made for, with, and by kids. And this is a new project that launched in the fall, so it's still really young in terms of even being a kid. It's still young, maybe Met babies. It's a Met Kid, and this project is also thanks to the funding of Bloomberg Philanthropies, which has a program that supports cultural institutions through Bloomberg Connects. So what I'd like to have you think about for a moment is, first of all, I'll ask this. How many people have been to the Met in person? How many people have been to the Met online? OK, so you know what kind of big place it is. And it's about 4 blocks long. It's 2 million square feet big. It's got 1.5 million objects, many galleries. And people walk up those steps on Fifth Avenue. About 6.3 million people walk in the door every year. But online, we see about unique visitor-wise, about 32 million visit us. And many of those people realistically may not come to the Met anytime soon. And so a lot of those people come in, though, and they have questions, which is really normal and to be expected in an institution that covers about 5,000 years of art. So I will just ask really quickly of maybe 2 brave souls. If you could ask the Met a question, what would it be? Is there someone who's willing to shout out a question for the Met? I don't promise to answer it. I just want to know what the question is at least. Yes?
What's your favorite gallery?
OK. Personally or the Met? OK, that's a good question. OK, and one more?
How do you decide what to collect?
OK, so these are great questions. And these questions are the kind of questions that I think we see many people are often too afraid to ask. They feel that maybe they need to know. But the people who don't need to feel ashamed of not knowing are 7 to 12-year-old kids who get a pass because they're allowed to come in and be curious and ask away without that filter and the assumption that they're supposed to know everything about 5,000 years of art history. That's pretty weighted stuff. So I'd like to show you a trailer and then to give you a quick overview of the project and then give you some insights into our R&D process and what we learned from kids, what we learned about kids, about art, and what we learned about us as an institution during the process.
How did you get all this stuff to fit in one big museum?
When I walk into this gallery, I wonder how the instruments sound and how the museum got them.
How do those art? I want to find out.
How do you take care of objects without damaging them?
I was wondering what the hieroglyphics on this temple mean.
Question. Why is it? Why is it we only talk about ancient Egypt, right? Going forward? OK. So I'd like to tell you a bit about the goals of this project. And actually, while I have this slide up, I'd like to give a shout out to, because it's an art institution and Met Kids is inspired by the art in the museum's collection, a wonderful illustrator contributed to this project. His name is John Kirschbaum, and he spent about 4 years drawing the inside of the Met for an illustrated map that we could make interactive. And when I tell you he knows every gallery inside and out, he could give an amazing tour. So what we set out to do was create a new space, a user-centered space, a kid space for, at the Met that was made for, with, and by kids. And I think that this was really important to me because what I had seen in the past at a lot of museums, including the Met, was that on our website, in our digital space, which is our fourth space, we have now 3 spaces. We have the Met main building, we've got Met Breuer, which is our new space that just opened up in the former Whitney Museum building. And so the Met Breuer is our new space dedicated to modern and contemporary, and of course the cloisters. But our other space is the fourth digital space. And that space, traditionally, whenever we had interactives or family guides, was on a place that was on a page called Learn or Education, and the front-facing message was, I'm talking to you parents, and you can decide whether to pass this on to kids. But it wasn't talking to kids directly. So this was to create a user-centered space for kids. It was also to create a scaffolded Met. Because I said, the place is enormous. It runs from 80th Street to 84th Street. It's a couple of stories tall. It's hundreds and hundreds of galleries. So you have to find a way to make it a smaller, more intimate space for the first-time visitor, and also help make it manageable for someone who's come even numerous times to find something new. And we never wanted to forget that it was going to be an artful experience, because at the end of the day, we're a mission-driven organization. Education is one part of that mission, and it had to be focused on art. So our process, this was an R&D-driven project where kids were involved at all stages. The kids were involved from the beginning, because again, it had to be about for, with, and by kids. We wanted to ask right at the beginning, in the formative stage, to kids, what should a digital space, that if the Met had a digital space, what would it look like? What would it feel like? What would it offer? And so what we did was actually bring kids in to the Met, all different kinds of kids. Kids from New York City, we'd get kids who were visiting on spring breaks, Christmas breaks, or holiday breaks, after school. We'd work with cultural organizations that had ties to the Met, first-timers, casual visitors, and worked with them in the museum and asked them, would they like to be part of creating a new site for kids? And what was really interesting was that inevitably, I would say 90% of the people who walked in the door and were approached and asked, if we asked their kid, would you like to help us build a new digital space for you? They said yes. And it was also really funny because if the kids were coming in, we learned a lot about parents. For example, French parents are happy to leave their kid with you and just walk away for 40 minutes. They were great. I was like, you have to come back and get them. Whereas so not helicopter parents. But we brought them in, and the kids were from all different countries, all different states, and again, first timers. We brought them back, new kids back, to show them designs based on what kids said, to give more feedback. We brought them when the design phase happened to give feedback about that, and we even brought them back in for user testing and even post-launch because we're never going to really be done, right? This is not a project that has an end date. It's like a kid, it's just going to keep growing. So we brought them in to keep learning. We had an advisory committee of kids inside, as well as curators and educators who were working in conjunction and collaboration with one another. And throughout the project, we needed to make sure that we had alignment with the Met's mission, education programs which already exist in the gallery, so I didn't have to create from scratch some kind of educational mission. We work on object-based art appreciation. We have many gallery and studio programs. There's a lot of really great ideas that needed to just be transferred to a new space. And also, we were fortunate to be able to have access to New York City visual arts educators who had created a blueprint for the arts, which gave us a lot of ideas about what kids learn about at certain ages, in between 7 and 12 years old. And that was a really great collaboration with the NYC DOE. So who are Met Kids? Met Kids are 7 to 12. This is a project aimed at 7 to 12-year-olds. As our R&D, we had over at least 175 and continuing to get more. And the kids came in, they were our makers, they were our reporters, our animators, the testers. They really are their hands are figuratively and literally in the media that you will see in this project. And the other thing that was really important to us was that they were real kids. So there are no actors involved in Met Kids. These are just real kids who had real questions that they wanted answered, and we would match them up with their question with a specialist who was able to answer it. during the R&D process, we got to hear some great, we gathered, of course, quantitative data, qualitative data. It's always really fun to hear what they actually said. So out of the mouths of Met kids, we loved hearing about, it's cool to see someone my age in charge. They really liked this, this role of being on par with a specialist in the field. They found it inspiring. They loved seeing other kids represent, and they loved seeing another smart kid. That really made them proud when the kid could hold up their end of a conversation. And it was great for the curators and conservators, for example, to see how smart and investigative kids could be. I think what happened was it really upped the ante on both sides of the conversation. So as we developed the pages, and we created all new content for hundreds of objects in the Met's collection, and we continue on a monthly basis to keep adding more onto our interactive map that's initiated by little pin drops. We found out that one of the things that kids find essential is a fun fact about the object, something that'll give it a hook. And so that's not fluff, that's actually to them something that's really important. Give me a reason to care, to pause, and think about that object. And I'm willing to bet that that's something that we should think about at the Met on the labels of the general galleries. Everybody, there's those labels all over, and think about how a lot of people do like that 7-second shuffle of paintings. They just, this, this. But if you had a little hook, this is why you should care. This is what, this matters. Hey, pass it on. And so the kids had to weigh in on these fun facts. If it wasn't fun enough, we went back to the specialist and said, that wasn't fun enough. Can you give us something else? So here's a quick one. Has anyone read the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler? When the kids run away and, yeah. So there's a 4-poster bed in that kids love to go see. Well, the 4-poster bed has these drapes around them because at night people used to believe that the air was toxic, it was poisonous. That got a thumbs up from our testers. That one is a good fact. We also changed the language on those labels, which we call the tombstone in Met parlance or museum parlance, to small digestible bits, discover, imagine, create, that can be experienced non-linearly. You can only click imagine if you want, all open-ended. Discover lets you learn interesting facts about the object. Create is to inspire you to create your own work of art inspired by what you've learned. In terms of the time machine emerged, kids think about the Met as a time machine. This is what we heard over and over, where adults talk about getting lost in the museum and needing wayfinding devices. Kids were really comfortable. They told us they liked that here that you can stand in the Met, if anyone knows the Met galleries and the Roman galleries, you can go like this and then walk over here. And you've just walked into Oceania. You have just jumped centuries, or millennia, and you have just crossed the world. And kids love that. And so we asked them to draw time machines. And these drawings directly inspired the designs of the website. So I talked about scaffolding, creating a scaffolded experience. What we learned in the time machine, give them what they want. If they think about the Met as a time machine, then let's give them that. Let's let them jump in the time machine. So we created the time machine. We gave them time periods, geography, and big ideas, all inspired by what they told us. One thing we learned was that kids cannot type in an exact, 7, 8, 9-year-olds especially can't, in an empty search bar, put in a particular time period. They just, they know that they like the ancient world. And one kid told us when we said, well, give me an example of ancient world. And he was about 9, I think. And he said, oh, I'd like to go back in time to like the ancient times, like maybe the 1980s. And I would. So he was never invited back, but they really don't know. So what they do know is they are interested in the ancient world, and then they can recognize different times. Let them do it as many times as they want. You can keep doing this time machine as often as you want. And yes, don't be afraid to be smart and fun. In our research, Met kids love being smart and fun, and simultaneously. They don't think that they are smart sometimes and fun sometimes. They can grasp that they can be smart and fun. And that's a fun moment. So something fun they recommended was it would be funny and very unexpected at the Met to have a don't touch button. And so we gave that to them. And I won't tell you what happens. It's really, I think it's fun. It's all inspired by what they did. So there is a don't touch. In this one, pass the mic. Give the kid the mic. They will rise to the challenge. When you give them a job of responsibility, they they blossom, and they don't waste the opportunity. They're just wonderful. So I say give them that voice, give them that platform. These two girls were interviewing a Beijing-based artist who was visiting the Met, and they were so excited because they have been studying Chinese since they were young, so they got to speak to a Chinese artist who was blown away at their interest in art and their interest in his work in his native language. I'm going to give you just a couple of seconds of this video to give you a sense of a question. This is a real question from a real kid.
Hi, I'm Xavier. I'm 11 years old. I am from Manhattan. We're here in the conservation lab of Arms and Armor.
Hi, my name's Ted. I'm the conservator for the Department of Arms and Armor at the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
How long does armors last?
It depends on how well taken care of it is. We have things up in the galleries right now that are 1,000 years old. A lot of that is because of conservators here in the museum, like myself, who spend a lot of time taking care of those things.
A conservator helps make armor last by preserving it.
We make sure that they're in a good environment and that they have good storage or display conditions. We keep them clean, and the more we take care of it, the longer it will last.
How do you take care of objects without damaging them?
Do you want me to show you?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna go over to my desk.
Okay.
We have
Okay, so, and we have lots of these where kids are basically the behind-the-scenes reporters getting to work with specialists. And I think it was a learning experience for all of us to figure out that, kind of like in the words, I'll paraphrase Myra Kalman, who's an author and artist I really admire, that you don't want to talk down to kids or talk up to adults. You just got to this really nice middle ground. In terms of our content drivers, a lot of things that you might expect if you've been to the museum, and even if you haven't, ancient Egypt rose to the top, the tomb of Perneb, Dender, the Arms and Armor galleries. They loved finding pins like the locations. Kids keep checking into the information desk. And then in the time machine, which they do over and over, mythology, the ancient world, and fashion. We invite kids' participation through a blog that we publish to regularly, weekly, where we get kids' letters and then we match them up with specialists to answer their questions online because, of course, video is high production, so we can answer a lot of questions on our blog. Just a quick note on our behavior right now. So right now we're running at 56% of our visitors are new and the rest are returning. We're really happy to see that 30% of our users are returning 3 or more times. At the moment, we have not launched our iTunes app yet, but we have a mobile site. Our site is responsive. It scales from desktop to tablet to mobile. And so this is the figures that we're seeing right now. We'll see what happens when we launch the app. And we're in about 154 countries right now and around the world. And the languages keep changing. One thing we have done in response to this is we've taken all of our video content and translated it into 11 languages, which are the same languages that are supported in the museum. So if you go to our playlist on YouTube, the Met Kids playlist, all of the videos run in captions in 11 languages. Just some other ways we continue the project through the newsletter. We have a targeted e-newsletter, which is only about Met Kids. We don't try to sell memberships or tell you about other things that you didn't ask for. It has a 75% repeat open rate. Our blog brings people, and social media, even though it's a kids project, we do work with our social media team because 7 to 12-year-olds are not on Twitter. But you can reach out through the gatekeeper of the parents. And the reach, in fact, our top Facebook post was related to Common Sense Media giving us a strong review. And so the key takeaways, I would say, is in terms of R&D process and what we learned is to seek many diverse voices right from the outset and continue. Get kids involved early, get lots of kinds of kids in early. Kids are excellent partners. They brought so many good ideas. They were very honest. When something was not up to their standard, they told us. If the design was boring, they told us. If it was good, they told us. So we went into the project feeling very strong and excited to have them as partners. I would say you have to focus, especially in an art museum, you're dealing with, in our case, the pinnacle of human achievement in terms of the art collection, and we owe it to these kids to offer a great deal of, as much respect to the kid as to the art on the wall, and so we have to speak to them in that way. So they are spoken to as, they're called Met Kids Advisors, they're celebrated in that way, and they're invited to keep contributing. Our kids told us that they liked coming to the Met, that content trumped bells and whistles. And I think that might be because they expect that from other places. They don't necessarily expect that from us. That doesn't mean that we're not going to keep pushing forward with digital, but they told us that what was more important to them was to have a really good Met experience rather than necessarily an AR, VR experience. But we're exploring that in the digital department anyway. And the most important salient point I would say is that Met Kids is made for 7 to 12-year-olds, but I would say that we all benefit, and I think when you check out the project and see some of the videos, I know I have learned from every interview that we have done that we all benefit from the questions that kids are bold enough to ask. So thank you very much. If you'd like to check out the project.